Did Omar Khan just fail the Pittsburgh Steelers by not trading for Brandon Aiyuk? Well, let's look at both perspectives of it. But first, before I get more into this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news and updates. Also, like the video. Now, let's get right back into it. So, the whole thing this offseason has been Brandon Aiyuk, Brandon Aiyuk, Brandon Aiyuk. And is the Pittsburgh Steelers going to trade for him? Is the San Francisco 49ers going to let him go? Well, they actually just signed him to a 4-year, basically $30 million per year deal, which equals out to $120 million over 4 years. And the Pittsburgh Steelers did not trade for him. And it has many fans thinking, hey, did Omar Khan just fail this situation miserably? So looking at it from each perspective, you could say, hey, yes, Omar Khan did not trade for Brandon Aiyuk, and he failed in that category. But when you look at it overall, maybe he made the right decision, because you're going to have to give up so much assets, so much draft capital, and on top of it, pay $30 million per year. Is it the right decision? Well, 49ers kept him, the Steelers didn't, so that was a decision that was made. And we're going to have to live with it and live with the wide receivers we have in the room right now. There's also another perspective from it saying, hey, maybe Omar Khan was too tunnel vision on trading for Brandon Aiyuk that he did ignore basically all the other wide receivers that became available. For example, when the Courtland Sutton trades were going around, the Pittsburgh Steelers were involved a little bit, but maybe they were holding off on Brandon Aiyuk, and now the door is closed on both of them. Mike Williams, for example, the Jets end up offering him more money than the Pittsburgh Steelers, and now the Pittsburgh Steelers are left with the most cap space still left in the NFL for this season. So they could have used that, but maybe they were saving the money to pay Brandon Aiyuk. Also, when you look at Tyler Boyd, the Pittsburgh Steelers offered him like a $4 million contract. He ended up signing it elsewhere. If the Steelers use their cap space that they now have, maybe he could have been on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Also, when you look at the guys who recently became available, like Noah Brown or Tim Patrick, the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't even show interest in them. So maybe when you look at that situation, they were so set on still getting Brandon Aiyuk that they just ignored the wide receivers that became available just around the league in general, free agency, or even some other players that were open for trade. Maybe because of Brandon Aiyuk, the situation got clouded. Omar Khan thought for sure he was going to get Brandon Aiyuk, but then he didn't, and then it kind of left the Steelers room in shambles now, really only having George Pickens as a proven receiver. Because if George Pickens goes down for any amount of time this season, it's going to be looking pretty bad at wide receiver in terms of having other people step up to positions they're not used to. For example, Calvin Austin or Van Jefferson would have to be a wide receiver number 1, which they haven't been throughout their career. Even George Pickens, he hasn't ever been a number 1 wide receiver. Obviously, we want him to take a next step, but hopefully he ends up panning out and taking that big leap that we all expected. Another perspective we could look at this from is Deontay Johnson. The Steelers are left with a wide receiver room that isn't all too good in terms of top tier talent. With Deontay Johnson, it was a lot better because then you have 2 wide receivers that defenses really have to pay attention to. And early on in the season, it was DJ who was getting more of the attention than George Pickens. Later towards the end of the season, it became GP, George Pickens getting the most attention. But DJ did help GP kind of take the spotlight off of him and help him get open because of it. So when you look at the Steelers trading away Deontay Johnson, they traded him away for a cornerback. And that kind of helped solve an issue on their team in the cornerback room. And maybe Omar Khan or the Steelers trade away DJ to get a cornerback because they knew, hey, a wide receiver is going to become available. We're going to get him. But that never ended up panning out. So you kind of solved a hole at one spot on your roster at cornerback, but you created another hole at wide receiver. And now you have to rely on other guys stepping up to fill that hole that maybe aren't used to doing it. So, in this video so far, I'm going through all the perspectives that could be had on the situation at wide receiver this offseason. But if we're looking at my perspective and what I think, when I think about the wide receiver position, I think, hey, yes, maybe it was ignored. Maybe Omar Khan did think that he would land a big time receiver in the trade market, so it was ignored in terms of free agency and signing the guys for the top tier money or signing guys for like $10 million plus. There's no really receiver available for like 20 plus million. But in the $10 million range, hey, maybe that was ignored because Omar Khan did want to save that money to land a top tier wide receiver. It never ended up happening, but maybe that's what happened. That's my perspective on it. But when you look at the actual Brandon Aiyuk trade, I've been always set on this. If you have to give up a first round draft pick, second round draft pick, or just 2 draft picks combined, second and third, and on top of it, pay $30 million in which he signed for with the 49ers, $120 million over 4 years, it is not worth it. It is not. When you look at this team, it would keep them so kind of money tight for the next 4 years. Because in a few years, I've said this many times, you're going to have to pay George Pickens. Unless you plan on letting George Pickens walk and not paying him, then what's the point of getting Brandon Aiyuk? You would want to have both receivers. So it would kind of keep you tight on money to make other moves. And you can't pay 2 receivers $30 million. It just cannot happen in today's day and age in the NFL when you're trying to build a complete team. It'll keep you kind of paying low money to other areas of your team and keep you not really in a good situation at other positions. And for example, Pat Freiermuth, his contract is coming up. James Daniels, at year's end, he is a free agent, one of the best guards in the NFL in terms of not allowing any sacks last season. When you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers running backs, you're going to have to pay Jalen Warren, Najee Harris. There's also other players' contracts that are coming up as well, like Cameron Hayward at year's end. Are you going to pay him? And you're looking at paying Brandon Aiyuk $30 million. And that $30 million could be spread amongst other guys to retain some of those guys. Because if you're using that $30 million, that's $30 million wasted on one person. Yes, he's a top tier player, but you're going to have to pay some other guys on your team. And unless you plan on letting them all walk for nothing, then you have to look at it from that. And on top of it, not just paying the $30 million, you're giving up draft capital as well. You're giving up assets that you could use. Maybe you could use that second round pick to draft a wide receiver instead. We all know the Steelers are so great at drafting wide receivers. That's kind of their thing, wide receivers and edge rushers in the draft. So maybe you could use the second round pick on a wide receiver, the third round pick on a wide receiver. You could use both of them on a wide receiver, and then you would have to pay that wide receiver on a rookie contract. So yes, they're not going to be Brandon Aiyuk right away, but they could be. They could develop into a Brandon Aiyuk. That's how gems are made, through the draft. So when the Pittsburgh Steelers have to give up draft capital, give up money that could be used elsewhere to sign some guys, retain some guys, then I believe personally it was not worth it. I believe the right decision was made by not trading for Brandon Aiyuk. I don't know if it was because the 49ers just didn't want to trade him or the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't want to up their kind of trade offer for him. Whatever it was, it worked out for the best, and I believe the right decision was made. Now, just because I said that was the right decision on Brandon Aiyuk doesn't mean that I believe the right decision was made by not signing another wide receiver in free agency, because I think the Steelers should have. Just looking at the cap space we have right now, it's over $20 million. And you can't just use all that cap space on one person as of right now. Unless you're just doing contract extensions, then sure, you could use that cap space. But when you look at the cap space that they have for this season, they have a lot. And they didn't use any to upgrade the wide receiver spot. You knew that you lost DJ, a really good wide receiver, a 1B type of receiver. So when you lose a 1B and you don't fill it in with a 1B at least, and you fill it in with a third or fourth string receiver in Van Jefferson from last season with the Raiders, then that's not upgrading that position. And you could have used that money elsewhere to upgrade it. You have a lot of cap space. I already said this, $20+ million. Maybe they were saving it for Brandon Aiyuk. Maybe they were saving it for other receivers in the trade market. But whatever it was, the Pittsburgh Steelers at wide receiver failed. But overall, as a team, I believe this was good for our future. Anyway, with that being said, that's the end of this video. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below about this whole wide receiver situation. Not just Brandon Aiyuk, but you can let me know your thoughts down in the comments below about not getting Brandon Aiyuk, but just a wide receiver and how it wasn't addressed this offseason. And are you comfortable heading to the season with George Pickens as the number 1 Van Jefferson and Kelvin Austin basically as the number 2. And if George Pickens misses any time, do you believe we're still in a good position at wide receiver? Because you have to take that into account as well. It's a 17-game season. Anything can happen. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And also, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news, updates, highlights, analysis, reports, everything like that. I've covered it all this offseason, and I'll continue to cover all as we head into the regular season here, starting Thursday for the NFL, but Sunday for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So turn notifications, like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys all later. Until next time, I'm out. Peace.